These guys are going to be released in the future again. The return of the Nephilim, the fallen angels, the gods themselves with a small g. They are coming back during the apocalypse time.
Cracking history rip like the beaks of a griffin with sharp pointy tips and the grip of a falcon. Grasping with grappling talents and worn on medallions of battling Scythic and nomad. So many masterfully sculpted renditions, artistically marvelous, monstrous visions, descriptions of possibly authentic dragon-like animals, fossilized mandibles gradually formed by the annual downpours and rainfalls, exposing mysterious samples. Examine examples like still in the seals, revealing the secrets of serpents unveiled by ubiquitous snaps of a snapdragon. Sounds serendipitous, just like the epic of Gilgamesh. Several conspicuous mythical beasts can exist, and in fact they could actually be crossbreeds from angels who planted the seeds on indigenous demons hungry to breed. In the days of Noah, from the book of Enoch, in the path of giants, revealing the hybrid. What we see in this antediluvian world full of giants, if we could go back and observe all the things in the lost book of Enoch and these drop a Nephilim hybrids and fathers who flocked in a pack of 200 deserters. These tyrants who plundered like pirates and lusted for flesh in a cycle of violence. They squandered like pigs in the mud of defiance. Abnormal like Dr. Moreau and his science. Monsters without any use of a latex appliance. Of violent lions of violent Goliaths, drowned and deluged by the flood into silence. Desirous to leave once they lost their commission. Now Lucifer's legions they turned into demons, chained and blinded and bound in abyss, living with locusts deep in the pit. In the days of Noah, from the book of Enoch, in the path of giants, revealing the love hybrid. These lost from a time in our history. Should we be blind to the mystery? Willingly ignorant to the reality. Fallacies formed by fallacious facsimiles, angelic offspring conspiracies, possibly aliens visiting, revealing sinister enemies, posing as saviors with remedies, history, mental capacities, cavities. Demons are grabbing our faculties, abducting sanity, offering new age mentalities, fraudulent phonies who mimic and imitate, based in satanic magic, facilitate UFO sightings, debacle, debauchery, sorcery, portable forgeries, copied demonically forged by a fork-tongued mythology. Genesis 6 house of Nephilim, vividly mentioning stories of alien babies and women apparently forced to endure hybrid pregnancy. In the days of Noah, from the book of Enoch, in the path of giants,
because Satan and Lucifer imitate what the true God does, would it not make sense that when these guys fall to earth, maybe they will come in spaceships to take you to the next step of evolution, to bring peace on earth? We've got rid of all those Bible thumpers, those right-wing fundamentalists, nutcases, and those hate mongers, and we've got rid of them. Now we're here to bring mankind to the next step of evolution.
Hello.
Hey, we are in.
Hello. We are here. Welcome to episode number 29 of Digging for the Truth with Ark and Neo live.
First live go. This is.
Yep, this is our first live episode. I'm hoping you guys can hear us in the chat. If you can confirm here that you can hear us, that would be great.
This is Neo Newman from Parts Unknown, if you can hear me.
Yep, and Ark from Destiny Lab here. So, all right, hoping you guys can hear us just fine. So, thank you guys for all tuning in. This is kind of a last minute thing. We decided just to hey, we're going to try this out and go live. We've never done a live show. We've always taped it before, but we figured, heck, this will make it a lot easier. They don't have to do any editing or anything, but I don't have to. I won't be able to have my cool intros. I'll have to somehow. I don't know. I'd have to make those before and then play them or something. I don't know, but
yeah. Hey, that'll be all right.
It's cool. Yeah, we can play video or something, so that works out. And Neo doesn't have a camera, so that's why we don't have cameras right now. So we're not showing our
secret identity.
That's right. We're undercover. So, but what we talk about is what's most important. So hopefully that is not an issue. But we can share our screens, which is cool. That's another thing that's cool about this live thing. We can share screens and bring up information if we want to show you guys stuff. So that'll be cool as well. So thank you guys again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We got quite a few people here in the chat. So that's awesome. 77 people.
Hey, watching. That's awesome. That's great.
Yep.
So what are we going to talk about today? I think we've already got it planned out, but I think we're going to talk about the book of Enoch, right?
Yeah. I know we've done a couple shows here. We did Richie from Boston, and then we did another follow-up show with him as well, talking about the book of Enoch. But I know there's so much to talk about with that we figured we'd just do our own episode and kind of fill in the gaps and talk about it even more. So
yeah, we usually have the format we've usually followed in our previous podcasts is we talk about some of the history, and then we go into the Bible, and we really try to dig deep. That's why we call it digging for the truth, is we try to get into details and talk about things that most other people don't hit. So that's kind of been our motto and what we try to do in these podcasts. So, and we got, this is number 30, you said?
29.
29. Wow.
Yep.
And we've been doing it for quite a while. We've had a couple of where we had to pause for a while for different things, but I think we had, I don't know what, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, we had big breaks in between, and so we're just kind of do it when we can. And so this is cool. This will definitely save time if we can go live. I really like this, but so hopefully we'll have even more this way. But yeah.
So how's my mic? Is it a little too loud, or is it okay?
Yeah, it was just a little bit loud. I was telling you earlier, turn it down just a little bit.
Okay, we'll get all the. Okay, good.
So as far as the book of Enoch, I know that we'll probably have brand new listeners here that have never heard anything on it. So where to begin?
Well, so first let's talk about who Enoch was. So the book of Enoch it's an ancient Jewish religious work that's been ascribed to Enoch. And Enoch, as you know, is the great grandfather of Noah. And Enoch, actually, his name means teaching, is what his name means. And there's it's kind of interesting if you start looking at the meanings of the Jewish names. You can actually get a lot of information just from their names. But the book of Enoch is not regarded as scripture by Jews or any Christian group except for one group. And that's the group that has had it in their possession for thousands of years, which is the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. Mm-hmm. This is the same group that says they have the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah. So it is very interesting that this is the book that they claim is scripture. I don't know. I don't think there's any way for us to tell for sure if it is scriptural, but we do know this, that the earliest manuscripts of it are from around 400 to 300 BC. So we do have it is very, very old. and the book describes the ancient story of the pre-flood world, and it's ascribed to Enoch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that's
They
what's
had,
amazing is how ancient this really could be, and it's fascinating to think about that. This, and it's really interesting also to look at a timeline from Genesis through Noah, and to really think about the fact that the people back then were living to 800-900 years old, and so Enoch was the great grandfather of was it Adam? Or who was he a great grandfather of?
He was the great grandfather of Noah.
Of Noah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
So,
and another interesting thing about Enoch is that he didn't die. He's one of the two people in the Bible that didn't die. He was actually translator taken up to heaven at the age of 365.
yeah.
And the other being Elijah, who was taken up in a fiery chariot. So
yeah. So some people think they will be the two witnesses talked about in the end times prophecies. I'm not sure. What do you think about that?
well, yeah, it's possible, because there's the verse in the Bible that says it's appointed once for man to die. So who knows? But Enoch could be a type or a model also of the church being taken up. So in the end times, I think there will be people that won't die, because they'll ascend to heaven with Jesus. So if he's a type of that, then that would fit that type. And I think that's why a lot of people think that the two witnesses will be Elijah and Moses, who his bones were contended with the angel and Satan. They actually fought over his bones, which is an interesting thing that there's not much known about why they were fighting, but that could be maybe Satan knew that he was going to come back as one of those witnesses, that he would be risen again as Moses. But
yeah. Now, isn't there some thought as well that Moses' bones were actually kept in the Ark of the Covenant? Have you ever heard of anything about that? Oh, looks like we might have lost Neo there.
And Enoch began his story and said,
Hey, yeah, we lost you there for about 10 seconds. So I had just asked you
a
question, and then we just went completely out. So
I may cut out from time to time. So I've got it's the beauty of net neutrality. I live in a rural area, and they actually just found one of the problems that was reduced our speed, but they still haven't figured out why we're disconnecting. And we literally disconnect hundreds of times per day. So it's very annoying. And I don't know what it is, but there's literally no internet providers except for one in this rural area, and they're not very good. In fact, they just declared bankruptcy. So I think you've experienced the same thing with your internet.
We had
very bad
internet for almost 10 years, which really held me back with anytime I needed to upload anything, I couldn't do it. It would just always time out. There's all kinds of stuff that held me back from doing with my music. So, and we eventually found another internet provider that was, that brought in some new towers, and cause we live way out in the country. And so it definitely is, man, it's a huge difference.
Oh yeah. Well, let me start. I think I was reading a verse in the book of Enoch, chapter 1, verse 2, before I cut out. So let me just start that over again so everybody can hear it. This is what it says. And Enoch began his story and said, there was a righteous man whose eyes were opened by the Lord, and he saw holy vision in the heavens, which the angels showed to him. And I heard everything from them, and I understood what I saw, but not for this generation, but for a distant generation that will come. And I think that's an interesting way to start it, because knowing the fact that this book was lost for many years. Did I cut out again? Or am I still on?
No.
I'm still on. Good.
No, you're still here.
Okay, good. Because, a lot of people say, well, some people believe that the book of Enoch, which was known at the time of Christ, we do know that because it's quoted in Jude, and in several other places it's actually quoted. So it was well known at the time that Christ was around. And never rebuked it. That doesn't mean it's scripture. It could mean it's just a historical book that talked about the antediluvian world. And to me, that would be great if we had information, even if it's not, inspired by God. If it was preserved for that long, that would be absolutely incredible to know so much about this pre-flood world. But here's what's interesting. This book was thought to have been lost for over 2,000 years. And they knew that there was a book called the Book of Enoch because it was referred to by so many other ancient sources and even quoted parts of it, but no complete copies were known until 1773, when a guy named James Bruce, who was a Scottish Freemason, brought 3 copies back from Ethiopia. So he had gone to Ethiopia and he brought back 3 copies. So that's interesting. That during the time that they, like the King James version, the 1611 version, when they got together and they said, hey, here's the books that are inspired. The Book of Enoch wasn't even known at that time. There was no complete reference to it. So that does add a little credence.
So here's the question. Did he claim that he dug that up, or is this something that was hidden away in the archives of Freemasonry somewhere?
Well, no, he got it from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, this same church who claims to have the Ark of the Covenant to this day. They actually guard. So they say they have the Ark in a building right now, and it's guarded by ancestry has gone down. Oh man, this is so frustrating.
You're back now.
I'm back. Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah. No, I've seen that where they have somebody that's actually raised to guard that, and that's all they do their entire life. Just a single guy is at that temple, basically guarding the Ark of the Covenant, and they actually have implements of the temple that they've brought out a couple times and shown the public, these giant golden, I don't know, like scroll things and different implements they claim were from the original temple. So they seem to be
very interesting.
They seem to very sure of themselves and don't even care whether you believe it or not. It's kind of like, we know what we got, so bug off,
Yeah, they're that again, it's the internet. All right, I think I'm back.
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize, Timmy. We just, I'm probably going to cut out quite a few times just because of the poor internet that we have here. Yep. But it's interesting that Noah, the book, this Enoch had 2 main reasons for writing this book. One of them was the Watchers instructed him to do it. This is from the book itself. And he wrote the book to save his family from the flood, which was coming. So it's very interesting with this, and we probably won't even have time to talk about the whole part of the book. We're probably only going to be able to talk about the first part. In fact, some scholars actually split the book into 2 or even 3 books. They call it Enoch 1, Enoch 2, Enoch 3. So we're probably going to talk primarily about the first part that talks about him and the flood, and then him and the Watchers. And the Watchers are the angels. Some of them bad angels, some of them possibly good angels too. But what we think happened, what the scholars think happened, is that Noah probably brought a copy of this book on the ark with him and gave it to his son Shem. So remember, Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Yeah. And it seems that the copies of the book survived until Egyptian times around 3500 BC, because it was also known to Moses around 2,000 years later. And so apparently they assume that Moses took a copy of this with him when they all left Egypt. So this was probably in Egypt, and then when Moses left, he took a copy with him, because kind of strange. Remember that Moses was actually raised as an Egyptian prince.
Yeah. So he was very familiar with all the different magical, belief systems and everything having to do with Egypt, which is fascinating. He'd be somebody that'd be fascinating to talk to and pick his brain.
Yeah, in fact, Enoch has a prophecy which was fulfilled when Moses left with the copy from Egypt. So he was probably familiar with that as well.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, they say that
They had
Moses
it for several thousand years.
Yeah, they say that Moses was actually trained as a magician too. Is that true?
I don't know, but I'm sure he was aware of all those things as well before, God, he was probably knew about both, because remember, he was actually raised by his mother as a handmaiden. She was actually, after they put him in the river and was drawn out, which is what his name means, drawn out from the river by a princess. But then they hired a maid to nurse him. So, and the nurse was his mother. So, yeah, I'm sure she taught him about the Hebrew ways that were going on. So he kind of had dual training, which is kind of an amazing thing that happened in the way that God works.
Yeah.
So
interesting. So he brought out into the wilderness while they were wandering for 40 years, the book of Enoch there, probably with a lot of other ancient books,
Yeah. And, that Shem, who a lot of people believe that Shem was Melchizedek, which was the king of Salem, they call it, which is Jerusalem. And he was actually alive during the time of Abraham. So he actually, so that's kind of interesting that Abraham could have talked to Shem. He probably did. According to the book of Jasher, Shem actually taught Abraham the ways of God. So again, that's another book. That's the other thing. It goes in when you get into this. There's about 20 books that are referred to in the scriptures, in the Bible, and the 66 books were penned by 40 authors that are referred to, and says, "Is not it written in the book of Jasher, or is it not in the book of Wars?"
Yeah.
So there's all these other books that are referred to in the Holy Scriptures that we don't even have copies of, or we might have only fragments of. So, or they're referenced but with quotes. So there are other books that are not necessarily inspired or canonized, but they could be historical documents which we should take seriously and could delve into to get us some more information about these times. So apparently they believe that it got to, so the question is how to get to Ethiopia. Well, what the Ethiopians say is that during the reign of King Manasseh, which is around Second Chronicles and Second Kings, that Manasseh is the one that erected altars to Baal and Ashtoreth in Solomon's temple, and that he shed so much innocent blood that a lot of the religious establishment just left, and they took the Ark of the Covenant with them, and including important religious texts, and they took them to Ethiopia. So the descendants of these people are called I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but they call themselves the Thalashas, and they follow the ancient form of Judaism that was practiced at that time around 620 BC. And they translated the book of Enoch into Ge'ez is the language that was translated into. And that's when James Bruce, that Scottish Freemason, brought it back to England in 1773. It was in that language, and then it was translated back into English. But we don't know if
interesting. So I've got a couple questions. Somebody asked. Okay. Somebody asked any information about Enoch and Metatron.
Yeah, I haven't studied that much. Some people say this is all I know about it. Some people say that they're the same, Some people say that Metatron is like a super angel, but I don't have a lot of information about Metatron. I just don't know about that much. I've seen it, but that's all the information that I know that I have found out. Everything else, I think, is a lot of speculation. So, but I did see that in the quote by Sandman 369.
Yeah. So, for some reason, it brings up in my mind, I don't know if this is true, is the Merkaba. I don't know if you've heard of a Merkaba. Supposedly like a three-dimensional representation of looks like the Star of David, but in 3D, and it's like supposedly the craft that these certain angels fly in. But I think that's kind of maybe a new agey Kabbalah idea. I don't know.
Well, there is some really strange things in Enoch that talk about and the book of Jasher, to tell you the truth, because I kind of delved a little bit into Jasher, and they talks about a guy that was breaking up again. Yeah, there's some things in there that I think are occultic, or they're referencing, but the same thing in the Bible. The Bible talks about when they worship the Baals and the idols, and they turned away from God. It's tough. Somebody said, "Are you sure that Shem was Melchizedek?" Well, I'm not positive, but the book of Jasher does say that's who it is. But if the book of Jasher is right, probably, who knows? Again, that could be speculation. I don't know if the book of Jasher is completely accurate too. So it could have been added at a later date, but we do know that the book of Jasher is mentioned in the Bible several times, where they talk about it. Says, "Is not this written in the book of Jasher?" So, in other words, more details about that event. So, the book of Jasher was at least a historical document. We just don't know for sure if it's
canon, or if it's even corrupted, I guess. I know we probably, unless we have multiple copies, I'm not positive of that. If we've had multiple copies from different sources, like we do with the New Testament and the Old Testament.
Yeah. So we talked earlier a little bit about that Enoch is quoted in the Bible. And if you go to Jude, it only has one chapter, but verses 14 and 15, it talks about Enoch, where it says, "By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and it was not found, because God had translated him. For before his tribulation, or before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God." So he was. That's actually in Hebrew, or Hebrews 11:5, the verse I just read. But it's actually in two different verses in the New Testament. So Enoch is also the seventh from Adam. And some people, apparently the book of Enoch, we can't be sure that what we have today is the same book that we had back then, but it was known to the authors of the New Testament.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that they quoted it in the Bible shows that they at least knew it to be a book. And I don't think they'd be quoting it unless it was a book that would be reliable, So that is interesting for sure.
Yeah. I just cut out again, but I just keep talking if I cut out. But, the Bible actually has 20 books that are mentioned. It's like, for instance, the Book of Wars. That would be a really interesting one. And that's mentioned in Numbers 21:14. And that goes into great details about the wars, especially the wars of Joshua. And then the one I just talked about, Book of Jasher. If you look at Joshua 10:13, it talks about the Book of Jasher. There's the Chronicles of David, which are mentioned, 1 Chronicles 27:24. And many other ones that are found. The Book of Gad is mentioned in 1 Chronicles 29:29. So there's all these different books that in 20 total that are mentioned in the Bible that we don't have any record of, or very little record of. Like some of them we do, like a Book of Wars. There's nothing about it. There's not a single letter about that, but it's just mentioned in the Bibles and in some other ancient manuscripts, but we don't know anything about it. Book of Jasher, we do have copies of it, but and some of these in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah, you kind of cut out there. The Book of Jasher, we do have copies of it. And then what?
Well, and some of these were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Like another one was the Book of Giants, which is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And that's supposedly a compendium that went with the Book of Enoch, because it talks about the Watcher's offspring, which are these giants. And it has some visions in there that some giants had of their impending doom. It basically has different visions they saw, showing that they would be killed by a flood.
Interesting.
So, and we have that was found along with lots of the books of the Bible in those Dead Sea Scrolls that were found in I think 1947.
Yeah, interesting. Fascinating how all these things line up, and it's interesting to look at all the universal truths. I mean, even things outside the Bible that we know are not canon at all. Like, if you look at, I guess, some of the what can I think of it? Muslim texts. I guess they talk about the jinn, and that's where you get the word genie, or the genie in a bottle, and that's their idea of the fallen angels, and that there's certain overlaps like that are obviously the same memories, but misinterpreted or maybe interpreted.
Well, it's interesting that in the Book of Jasher, it goes into great detail about the earlier life of Abraham and his interactions with Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel.
Cutting out.
I was saying that the Book of Jasher goes into great detail about the early life of Abraham and his interactions with Nimrod, the one that built the Tower of Babel. And that's very interesting to see some of these things. And apparently, just got to throw this out, apparently Nimrod, according to the Book of Jasher, got something from his grandfather Ham. So remember, Ham is the one that was cursed by Noah when he saw him naked because he was one of Noah's three sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And Ham apparently took the garments which God created to cover Adam and Eve. And these, when Nimrod put the garment on, it made him strong. And that's when he became a mighty hunter, according to the Book of Jasher. So it's just interesting that a lot of these books have more details about some of these things that we just have little tidbits of it, but there's more information if you dig into them. And so when you read them, when I read them, I try to just look for connections with what the scriptures say. But I don't try to take everything as gospel, but I do find it extremely interesting.
Yeah. Now, how many do you think, of these fallen angels? I know there's the different types of angels, like the seraphim and the different types that are, with different multiple wings and multiple faces and all this stuff. Now, were they part of the fallen angels in the fall as well? And is that why maybe perhaps if they were interbreeding with humans and animals, is that why we get these really exotic, crazy, hybrid creatures? Yeah,
I'm not sure for sure, but we do know that a third of the angels fell with Lucifer. But this incursion, according to the Book of Enoch, I believe was 200 angels, and it talks about some of these angels taught men craft, different things like cutting of roots and herbs for medicine, the art of war. Different things that they actually taught mankind. So apparently, and the Book of Enoch goes into great detail that angels are actually the ones that are the kind of the overseers of stars and planets and the moon and all these different things, the celestial things that happen, and then even winds and the waters. So they all have like a purpose that they're kind of in charge of. Now, again, there's not much scriptural, from the 66 books of the Bible that supports that, but there's nothing that says that isn't what they're doing either. We do know that, for instance,
But what?
Yeah,
Yeah, you're cutting out again.
I know it.
Yeah, one thing that kind of backs it up as well, if these things are fallen angels and they presented themselves to be worshipped as gods, and like you said, they have attributes of controlling the wind and the thing. If you look at some of these belief systems of Hinduism and ancient Egyptian, it's like they had a god for everything, a god for every attribute of nature, every situation. They had a god that was attributed to that. So, that's kind of fascinating as well, that, if these things did have different specialties they're known for, that would be the things they presented themselves as, but an inverted version of it.
Yeah. Well, and, we know that we've always taken the position that fallen angels produced, they either mated or with technology created a new species called the Nephilim, which were half celestial, half angel, half human. And some of these are named in the Bible: Og, Goliath, Arba, Anak, Ishbinob, Lami, and others. They were all Nephilim. They were all giants. And the book of Enoch kind of goes into more detail about the children of these watchers as well. And according to Enoch 10:11, a giant has a max age of 500 years. That's one tidbit that they've got in there. And they also talk about what the demons are. So, see, a lot of people think that demons are fallen angels, and I think this verse is actually in the scripture too. I think it's corroborated in the scripture too. This is what it says in Enoch 10:11. It says that the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim are the demon, because they have no resurrection. So humans, when we die, we have a soul, which, if we believe in Jesus Christ, will go to heaven for eternity. But a Nephilim is not human or an angel, and angels can't die. So what happens to the soul of a Nephilim? Jesus didn't come to earth to die for a Nephilim and save them. So what they kind of talk about is that these Nephilim just kind of wandered after the giant died, and they have been kind of commissioned by Satan and his fallen angels to plague mankind. And there's an interesting verse in Isaiah 26:14. I'll just read it to you. Some of our listeners can read that too. So it's Isaiah 26:14. This is what it says: "They are dead, they shall not live. They are deceased, they shall not rise. Therefore hast thou visited and destroyed them, and made all their memory to perish." So the interesting thing there is the word dead is the word Rapha, which refers to Rephaim, which is a tribe of giants. And this word's used 8 times in the Bible, and it always refers to shades, spirits, or ghosts that roam. So this apparently is talking about this Rapha. So if it says they are Rapha, they shall not live, they are deceased, they shall not rise. Therefore hast thou visited and destroyed them, and made all their memory to perish. So when you look at this and you say, well, what are demons? Well, demons want to inhabit living beings. We know that because, remember in the story about where Jesus let the demons go into the herd of swine, and they all jumped off the cliff to their death instead of sending them back to hell. But this is what it says according to Enoch 15 and 16, this is what it says. And of the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirit.
Yeah, you cut out again. We got to get Neo some new internet connection. I don't know what we could do, but okay. The last thing you said
out again.
Yeah, you said evil spirits, and then you cut out.
Okay. This is from Enoch chapters 15 and 16. So evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies. This is speaking of the giants, because they are born from man and from holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for spirits of heaven, and in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of earth, which are born upon earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble. They take no food, but nevertheless hunger and thirst, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men and against the women, because they have proceeded from them. Wow. So that goes into great detail in the book of Enoch of what these spirits are, what these we call demons today, that they are oppressing mankind, and where they came from. They were from the dead Nephilim, the dead giants.
Yeah, not the fallen angels. So it makes sense, because it's like it says, he did not know he did not know them. And the Bible says all of us he knew before we were born. So literally our souls were known by God in the book of life before we were ever even born on earth. And so they were not ever even written in the book of life. They weren't even known. They were, completely created, by the fallen, and it should not have been. And so that's really fascinating how, there's just no place for them. It's kind of like, you imagine, if everybody has an apartment ready for them in heaven, and it's rented out to just your name, it's like, there's no place for these guys, There's no dwelling place created for them. And so they basically roam looking for a dwelling place, looking for something to inhabit. And they're so desperate, they'll jump into pigs, just to experience that physical that realm. So
yeah. Well, I know some people are saying in the chat talking about, what do you think of the Council of Nicaea? Well, I don't know for sure, but I do know in the days of Josiah, which is in 2 Chronicles 34, that the books of the law, or the Bible at that time, and this is Old Testament times, was lost for many, many years, for about 70 years is what most people believe. And people were going by what they thought it said, but they hadn't read it in a generation. And they found that book, and when they read it again, because somebody had tucked it away in one of the cubbies in the temple, because they were doing evil in the temple. And so some of the good priests actually hid away the real Bible, because they were destroying, they were burning the actual Word of God, because they didn't actually want the people to know what it said. And they found one when they finally got a good king, and they read it to the people, and they lamented and cried out and said, "Man, we're doing everything wrong." And so it has happened in the past that part of the scriptures were lost for at least 70 years. So it could be that these Ethiopian caretakers of the Ark of the Covenant and this book of Enoch were saving this information, whether or not it's inspired of God or just stuff we should know for this time, for these end days that we're in now. So I can't say one way. It's probably not. I think it is going to give us more information if it's true of information and ammunition for what's coming upon the earth in these end times with more genetic tampering.
Yeah, well, the timing is pretty amazing, just in regard to the books that we found so far and the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that type of thing. It's pretty incredible, the timing of all that it would happen 1947 or whenever it was, right when all these things are unfolding, right when, Israel becomes a nation, all these things are happening. And it's perfect. It's God's perfect timing. So we may indeed still find the Book of War and some of these other hidden books we don't know, or they may be out there in someone's personal library. And I know that a lot of these scrolls that they found were charred, but they have technology that are actually unraveling these and being able to read them. A lot of scrolls that they'd put away and thought that they'd never be able to read at all. They just looked like a brick of charcoal. Literally, they're able to X-ray now and unfold these with technology to literally
like
these
CT
things.
scans.
Exactly. So there's some incredible things unfolding. It's kind of like our old newspaper archives. They're able to go back. They don't have the search engine option there, but they're really unraveling a lot of information that is in there, and there's only so much that they can do at a time because it's so time consuming and such a process. We need more people involved in those. Yeah, that's where it'd be nice to have a lot of people involved in that kind of stuff, trained researchers and the technology and money to really unfold this information, because I think we could really, possibly change our entire world in the way that we are looking at things and preparing for things. So,
just going back to what this book, the Book of Enoch just could be a good retelling of the antediluvian world, but not be inspired. I mean, that could be a possibility. But the question is, why do so many people call it heresy? I mean, that's what we see today. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's heresy." Well, when you read it, there's no false doctrines that I've seen. They're not, they're not saying that Jesus isn't God or saying that there's other gods out there. There's not false doctrines that I've seen in it. It does have some strange things in it, but most of the time I think it's because of a misunderstanding of today's churches, because it describes angels. And many of the, especially the early church, consider this a dangerous topic. In fact, there's a guy named Sir Walter Raleigh, and he wrote a book called "In His History of the World." It was written in 1616 while he was imprisoned in the Tower of London. He makes a curious assertion to part of the Book of the Book of Enoch, which contained the course of the stars, their names and the motions, and which had been discovered in Sheba. And apparently this book was available to him because he referenced it. And this was the time when this guy named Origen, he was a scribe at that time, and he was the guy that cooked up the Sethite theory. If you know what I'm talking about, that's where the sons of Seth back in because some people don't believe that that angels came down and made with human women. There's a whole theory that wasn't what people believed at the time of Christ. It was something that was cooked up by this guy named Origen, and apparently that it could have been that this book was actually available because this Sir Walter Raleigh in 1616 referenced it. And it could be that they kind of put it out of the remembrance or just started destroying these books because they didn't want people to believe that there was this hybridization of mankind, which I think is scriptural. I mean, it's real hard to make the view that of the Sethite view of the Nephilim that and Chuck Misser, I think, is the guy to go to if you want to get a really good information on why the Sethite view isn't biblical.
It doesn't hold up. If you try to talk to somebody that tries to defend it, it's kind of sad, actually.
It is. It's completely. It's not scriptural. I mean, they're making it up basically. But most churches hold the Sethite view because it's spooky. It's kind of
Yeah.
spooky, but if you take the whole Bible, it's very evident that there was fallen angels, and somehow they created a different race, a hybridized race, to destroy mankind. That's really what they wanted to do. It was genetic tampering.
And, not only does the Bible say this, but we're still seeing this to this day with the false alien deception of these people taken, at night against their will through sleep paralysis on supposed, ships or into some sort of craft. And they have these sexual hybrid, these experiments done on them to create these hybrid babies. And then they're come back to show these babies. So it's the same story. And if you look through ancient times, it was the elves and the fairies of ancient times that was the same story going on.
Oh yeah. 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 It's I think that the people that hold that view, they just, who knows why they keep wanting to do it, but genetic tampering, I think, has been Satan's plan from the beginning to first to destroy all of mankind. And I think he almost did it. It was down to 8 people. Noah and his 3 sons and wives were probably the last. It says Noah was perfect in his generations. That means he wasn't perfect as far as sin goes. It means he was genetically perfect. He was out spot or blemish. And then remember what they did when Abraham said, "You're going to inherit this land." What did Satan populate the promised land with? Giants.
Giants, yeah, the giants. They looked like grasshoppers compared to them.
Yeah, more hybrids. So they want to destroy them by populating this land, so they couldn't physically take it, and God supernaturally cleared them out.
Yeah.
And then later with Joshua, and then I think in the end times, it says in Matthew, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. I think genetic tampering is coming again. But now Satan is using technology. He's going to use technology to change the genetics of mankind. And we've talked about this before. It's theory that we have, but it fits with what the devil, what Lucifer's tried to do from the beginning, which is to destroy mankind. And we think that may be another reason why we talked about where in the end times, if you take the mark, that's it. Can't be saved.
Yeah.
So what is that mark? Normally
it's just like the Nephilim made into an on.
Yeah. Your soul is sucked out like the dark crystal somehow, and you're left with just a hull, a body that's a body with a spirit but no soul. The soul has died, is gone. And that's the only explanation that I can think of that would allow, if you took some mark once at this time up until death. So that mark must mean some kind of a death where the soul is removed from the body, is what we've kind of believe.
Well, I think a perfect version of this is like the ayahuasca experience that people are having, where they go on this, they take this drug and they literally feel like they're dying, and they convince themselves, I just died. And they think they died, and this other entity comes into them. And I think that's exactly what's happening. They're dying to themselves. That's what they call it, the ego death. And they're never the same because they literally are possessed by this demonic entity. Do you have like a speaker going in the background? Because I can hear some feedback. Okay.
No, I don't. No, I don't have any speaker going. So, in fact, I'll unplug it. Just make sure we're not getting any.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, you see these universal kind of themes, and you can see them overlap with, because Satan's, lie is always the same. So you see it overlap with different aspects, tricking different type of belief systems through different times, but using the same disguise or the same foundational view and lie, appealing to the ego, telling somebody that be this great thing. You're chosen, you're special, all these kinds of things, and that you can evolve into this godlike being, like the serpent said in the garden, "Ye shall be as gods." So, and that's what Nimrod was trying to do with the Tower of Babel, is reach the heavens, and that's what they're doing now with transhumanism. And I could see where they're telling their consciousness into this machine. It's going to allow you to live forever. But really, it's just like a soul-sucking machine that literally takes your soul away, or implants some sort of, fallen angel DNA into you. Have you heard about this third strand DNA that people are talking about?
Oh, no, I haven't.
5G or something like that. It's kind of interesting where some people are claiming that 5G is going to somehow create a third strand DNA that's going to make people, that'll be the mark of the beast. I need to look into it more, but I just wasn't sure if you looked into that. But
I haven't, but I was amazed that I'd always, when we're on Richie from Boston talking about CERN, and I knew that place was creepy, but I'd never looked into it. I thought, well, it's just some weird science experiment, but why? I mean, they've spent trillions of dollars, I think, on that thing. I mean,
it's the most expensive machine ever built by mankind. They've never spent more money on anything in history but that machine. More scientists have worked on this machine than any item in all of history. And for what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For what? They claim it's for the God particle, is what they claimed, is to take us back to the beginning of the Big Bang and see the moment after the Big Bang. It's like, really? For what? Yeah, well, and then what are you going to do with that information?
Yeah, then what? Yeah, I mean, how's that going to help anybody? Yeah, there's got to be something more to it. The first time that I thought there was something spooky was when I saw the YouTube video of all those cloaked, hooded figures on the security cams coming out at night underneath one of those arches doing some weird ritual. And they said, oh, it's just the workers doing some prank. Yeah. But then Richie showed me all the runes on the bottom of that arch, and you're going, what is going on?
Yeah. And they have the Hindu god of what, I can't remember which god it is,
or something
of destruction. Yeah, I mean, it's literally of death and destruction, and it's wow. Why of all things did you have that there? And you're doing all these rituals and put these runes on these symbols on these statues. I mean, it's just like, well, there's obviously these people, maybe not all of them, but the people at the top are very familiar with alchemy and, runes and, witchcraft and all these things. They're familiar with it. And otherwise you would never even be able to joke about it. You'd just be like, what are these people talking about? We're doing science here. But instead they joke about it and know the details about it. So how do they even know about this stuff unless they are very familiar with it? Because it's not, people don't study all this deep Kabbalistic witchcraft unless you're literally a Kabbalistic witch or warlock.
Yeah. And there's something interesting that, we're talking about technology. If these angels actually did teach mankind technology, and we're seeing this huge increase since like the 1948, was there another incursion that happened around that time? Because so many strange events happened in 1948, Israel becoming a nation, and all these technological advances, the atomic bomb, the precursors to the computer chip, all these different things.
The Roswell incident.
Yeah, Roswell, all these things. But it struck me that, I don't know, I've never heard anybody say this, but in the book of Jasher, it talks about Og. And some people think that Og is this incredibly tall, like, in some of the Jewish mythology, it's not scriptural mythology. They say he's like, hundreds of feet tall. But in the Bible, it says that he did sleep in a 15-foot bedstand. But in the book of Jasher, it says that he went up on top of the mountain and took up a rock to destroy the entire encampment of Israel, hundreds of thousands of men. But it doesn't say that he actually picked it up. So that's, I think, where that false thing does. I think he could have used technology. And it said he was going to take this big rock and actually throw it, which is like I think it was 4 or 5 football fields in length.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they just assumed that he must have been really big to do that. But you talk about all these giant megastones, he could have been taught some kind of basically fly it over to him, because it
He
says
could have been some kind of what? You cut out there.
oh, he could have used some kind of technology that was taught to him to do these things.
Or
Because
what if he was a golem? Like
well,
somebody says
you know, yeah, but it says that an angel came and pinned it to his neck so that it was underneath him, and then Moses slew him by cutting his hamstrings, basically, with his
Well, that's
staff.
supposedly how they create golems, is they put some sort of symbol on their neck or their chest, and that's what like activates them to come alive or something like that. There's something to that. And they're supposedly made out of stone. That's what's kind of interesting, that depicted the Nephilim and these giants made out of stone. It's like, that's interesting. Where are they getting that from? The idea of a golem created out of mud and dirt.
Yep.
You know, I'm not sure, but it's fascinating nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, let me just do a quick overview of the first few chapters of Enoch, just so we can kind of get a flow for what it's talking about. But basically, chapter 1 is it talks about the prophecy of the flood and the judgment of the fallen angels. Both those are biblical events, and it just goes into detail that of this flood that's coming. There's a prophecy, and Enoch knows about it. And remember, Enoch has Lamech, and then Lamech has Noah. So he knows about this stuff. And then there's a judgment on these fallen angels that they did some pretty bad stuff, tampering with genetic information of mankind. And those things are going to take place. And basically chapters 2 through 5 talks that God is the creator of man, and man has rejected him. So it talks about all these things that man's doing to reject God. And we see that all throughout the Bible as well, that God's a creator and man continues just turns their back on him. They start serving a created being rather than the creator.
Yeah. I mean, that's the story of all the Bible. That's the story of the Jewish people. That's really the story of all mankind. That's the story of Adam and Eve. It's repeated time and time again. It's like God offering everything to us, everything we need, eternal life. All we have to do is turn from our own ways and worship him and follow him. And yet time and time again, we choose to worship ourselves and go our own way. Yeah.
Chapter 6 is where it starts getting interesting with some talks about the watchers in more detail. It says that the angels find the human woman beautiful and they lusted after them. And we do talk. It does talk about in the New Testament about the hair of women should be covered because of the angels, and when no one knows kind of why that happened, but I think it's referring because they knew about the book of Enoch when that verse was written, and they were probably referring to that is somehow enticing to these angels, is the beautiful flowing hair of women. Yeah, and this is what they said.
Go ahead, finish that.
Complete yours, because I'm going to kind of read some quotes from Enoch after this.
Just real quick, I was just going to recap. I know we touched on Hitler and the Thule Society and all that. Well, the channelers, coincidentally, that channeled his information, they were known to have. They all had hair down to their ankles, and they considered their hair their antenna, their spiritual antenna. And so, isn't it fascinating that that's what they were using to entice the entities they were interacting with to get this channeled information, is with their hair. The same thing the Bible warns us that the fallen angels are enticed by. Coincidence?
Wow. Yeah. I don't think anything's a coincidence. I mean, there's way spookier stuff out there than there's always things, underlying things that be, it's conspiracy theory. Oh no, I don't believe it. At the top of governments and all these things, it's always occultic. I mean, almost the occult people are always the ones in charge, and they're always the ones. I mean, it's just amazing. All throughout history, this kind of stuff happens, and Satan uses these people and gives them information, tells them and they're special, but then use them and destroys them in the end. Always. I mean, it's always the same story. But you're right. But
yeah.
So listen to this. Here's from chapter 6 in the book of Enoch. It says, "Come, let us choose wise from among the children of men and beget us children. And Simjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together and bound themselves by mutual agreement upon it. And they were in all 200 who had ascended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon, which they called it Mount Hermon because they had upon it." And then it goes on to
themselves to mutual implications upon it. So you cut out there, so I just filled in the gaps.
Okay, perfect. And then it goes on to name the names of the leaders of these angels of 10. So there's 20 names, I believe, that it names right there at the end. But that's interesting. So because the Bible talks about Jared, in the days of Jared is when the sons of God came down to man. So that's when they came down. It also talks about Mount Hermon being this special place that where they came down. So,
and the other thing is the Bible goes into. I know you're going to get into this. The notes is that the giants became cannibals. They became cannibalistic and were actually eating humans. And this is over and over again the same story you hear through all these different cultures is the idea of giants being cannibals. And it's depicted in. I just posted something on. I can bring this up really quick through. If I go to, or actually, I'll try to bring it up while you're talking. Still, we'll go on to the next thing. But I found recently some carvings that they found of these giant stones, and each of the stones is showing a giant holding a little human in their hands and basically eating them. It's like goes back to Jack and the Beanstalk, fee fi fo fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. He was a cannibal giant. Where do we get these ideas? This goes way back into ancient folklore. It's not just folklore, but it's based in some sort of real historical memory that has been turned into folklore. And so and in different cultures too. It's not just one culture. That's what's so creepy about it.
There's a recent Netflix series just came out called Ragnarok that it's actually in a different language. It's in but it's about the Norse mythology of the giants fighting against the humans, and these giants are getting their strength by drinking blood. It actually shows the giant. They're not big. It shows a guy like jumping off this cliff and grabbing a full-grown caribou and ripping its heart out and eating it. So they're cannibalizing them, but they're kind of being secretive about it too. But they drink blood too. That was the other thing that. So all cultures have this same fear of giants and this same story. So it is incredible. But so chapter 7 in Enoch, it talks about the evil angels where they taught people charms, enchantments, cutting of roots, made them acquainted with what plants do. So some of these things are actually good, but that's the thing about technology. I mean, we now have computers now. Is that good? But we also have the atomic bomb. Is that good? Well, we got atomic power, I guess. We've got electric engines now. We've got different things that help us in many ways. But, is this... I think the way God wanted it was to us to have in a perfect world like the Garden of Eden, where there was no thorns or thistles. We would get our food just by walking around and picking them off the trees. You know, we didn't have technology that had to do all this stuff for us. And I think that's in our back of our minds. We always think, man, that'd just be an awesome thing to not have to toil and to work, and to we could just, you know, walk around and have fun and climb trees, and, you know, just anytime we get hungry, oh, look at that, there's pick something out of the tree, and it's always growing, and always, you know, you didn't have to store up food for winter, and the weather was always great, you know. So are these technologies good? I mean, I don't think God originally intended us to have to even have this stuff. He intended us to just to all our needs be provided, and I think eventually it will go back to the way it was.
Well, and you know, the more technology grows, the more dependent we become upon that. And you know, we look around us, and all we have to see is look at everybody looking at their phones to see that. And what's the symbol on that phone?
Yeah,
of course, the bite out of the apple. Back to the Garden of Eden. Back to the Garden of Eden. You shall be as gods. You know, it doesn't get any more in your face than that. And you know, and so it's pretty amazing that this stuff is just so blatant, and yet people are just like, no, this is all fairy tales, myths, and all you got to do is put all these pieces of the puzzle together, and it all becomes so very clear. This is exactly what's happening, and if you don't look at it this way, you're going to be lost. I mean, because this basically exactly explains what's going to be happening in the future, and it's fascinating the names of these fallen angels as well, and that they actually line up. I've heard the name Semyaza actually being given as a spirit guide name, and by a channel by a shaman saying this is an entity that he was going to call in named Semyaza. So I mean, it's pretty interesting that they literally call on these exact same entities and fallen angels by name that are for witchcraft while they're doing witchcraft and drug taking, and that's the fallen angel that was specialized.
Yeah, Aaron talks about black gold DNA, the third strand black gold DNA. Probably not even related, but it's when the Israelites, remember when Moses went up to the mount, and the mount was completely black, and he was the only one that was even had enough courage to go here where he got the 10 Commandments. And then when he came back, they had created a golden calf. Now, do you remember what Moses made him do with that golden calf?
He made him drink it.
You had to drink it. Yeah, colloidal gold. That's what remember the old colloidal silver? Apparently, colloidal gold has even better healing properties, but it's so expensive that nobody does it. So he actually made them dry. I've always wondered about that, if that's actually what it was like a colloidal gold that actually kept them, I don't know, cured them of things in the wilderness wanderings.
Well, and there's the whole thing of white gold, and there, it gets into a lot of new age, really off the wall stuff. There's people that actually ingest this white gold and claim that this is the food of the gods. This is the manna. All these kinds of weird, strange things. So, it can get into
manna is an interesting thing too. So, which kind of reminds me, I'm a technology. I'm really into technology and coding, that kind of stuff, and I've kind of started a project of creating a video game. So I know you've been doing your music to kind of spread God's word for many years, and I've started a project which it takes a long time to do. I've got a time frame of 3 years what I've given me to finish it, but I'm just kind of put it out there just to see if anybody else would like to help on this project. I don't need like money resources, but talent. But basically, today's kids, they're not getting the story of the Bible like we did as kids. We used to go to Sunday school, and we'd hear about David and Goliath and Moses and all the stories. And kids now, even kids that go to church, they're not even getting those Bible stories anymore. They don't see it. They don't know about it. It's just shocking over the last 15, 20 years, how many kids don't know who David and Goliath is? They never even heard it. They're just totally oblivious to these characters in the Bible. It's like the Bible is like unknown to our culture today. And so my idea is to try to make to put something out there that is in the medium that the kids are using, and more storytelling is done in video games, and because they can play it, they're constantly on their phones and different things. And my idea is to make a story of the Joshua and conquering the 31 kings, because I think it would be kind of an exciting thing. It has lots of battling stuff, but to teach the scriptures while they're doing it. So one of my ideas is that, like for instance, in the Bible, whenever there was a stones that were set up, it was to tell a story. And so in the game, I'm going to have these stones set up that if they find it, they have to, I'll give them some hints. They'll have to actually look in the Bible for the answer to the riddle. And maybe it's like where the stones, when they crossed the Jordan River, they had to set up 12 stones. And what's the story behind that? So anyway, if anybody's called by the Holy Spirit to, that's an artist that wants to design sprites for the game, sprites are like the images of characters, or if anybody is good at sound or background music to put in there, or voice actors, or even writing some of the cutscenes and things like that, get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me at diggingneo@gmail.com. Send me something out there if you're interested in working on this project with me. And I just I think that we should use our talents for God in one way or another. And maybe that's it. Maybe that's something that if somebody's called by the Holy Spirit to do something like that, send me a call, and I can give you some of the information, and we can work together on a project like that. But anyway, let's get back. So chapter 8 gives the names of these angels, these fallen angels who are called the Watchers.
Mm-hmm. But cutting out again. Right when it gets good, of course.
So who knows? Maybe that's that's a good thing. But I think in the originally
you cut out right when you said, "Let's go over the names of the angels."
Oh, okay. So this is chapter 8 in Enoch. Talks about Simiaza. He taught the enchantments of root cuttings.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, technology and information can be done for good or bad. Maybe that's like, turmeric. That's a root that reduces inflammation. So in one way it could be good, but there's probably a lot of bad things in there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just like we've said before, like, it's like fire, fire could be used for good or evil. It's not, it's God, not good or evil in itself. It's just a tool. And so it's like you said, I don't think we originally were intended to even need any of these things, but these things are things probably in heaven and knowledge in heaven that they stole from heaven and then basically inverted and twisted to then and deceive people on earth with. Yeah.
And then Azazel, this is apparently the guy that's bound in Dudaden, which is a place that Richie showed us the pictures of those jagged rocks. Apparently he's buried right there, but he taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets, ornaments, the use of paint, and the beautifying of the eyebrows. So apparently cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
And the use of stones of every valuable and select kind, and all sorts of dyes.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting? All these things that the fallen angels are into are all things that are still super popular to this day. Enchantments and root cuttings. Enchantments is witchcraft, basically. Root cuttings is drugs, pharmakia. Azazel teaches knives and working with mirrors. What's not more popular than mirrors
Yeah.
to people, and women beautifying their faces with makeup and wearing bracelets and ornaments and all these things. And then it goes into stones, use of stones of every valuable thing. So, all this new age is really deep into crystals and using these crystals to meditate with, and that they have powers and orgone energy and all this stuff. It's fascinating that things just continue.
Yeah. And they do. I mean, they do have things in it, but again, Satan corrupts everything. And so, I don't, like I said, I don't think all this stuff is bad, but it is,
exactly.
It is used for bad in many different ways. And so talking about this,
Satan doesn't make anything that's, remember, he just inverts and twists the things that God does make. So crystals and rocks are not bad. That's what I'm saying. I love crystals and rocks. I go actually rock hounding and look for gold and things like that myself. So I love that stuff. But when you begin worshiping it and calling on power through it, that's a different thing.
Yeah. Now, Azazel, he's that bad guy that taught him all that stuff. He's mentioned in Leviticus 16:10. So, and it says the other goat, it says this, the other goat, the scapegoat chosen by Lot to be sent away, will be kept alive standing before the Lord. When it is sent away to Azazel in the wilderness, the people will be purified and made right with the Lord. So this is where they send the scapegoat out into the wilderness, and then this demon Azazel apparently eats it, according to Jewish lore. He eats the thing, drinks his blood, and that's what sustains him in this place where he's imprisoned to this day.
Wow.
So that's one of these fallen angels that is mentioned in our Bible. So, a lot of people say, well, how many fallen angels are mentioned in the Bible? Well, you got Lucifer, name by name, and Azazel is another one. You got Beelzebub, and now that could be a demon name. We don't know for sure, but there are evil entities named in the Bible as well. So in chapter 3, you got a name named Amazarek, taught all the sorcerers and dividers of roots. So again, roots and sorcerers. So that's probably going to be drugs, because sorcery, I think, is pharmacia, which is associated with that kind of stuff. And then the guy named Amorosa, he taught the solution of sorcery. So, and taught the resolving of enchantment. So again, a lot of these things we don't really know what that means, because I'm not familiar with any of this weird stuff, but apparently some people are.
It's like some of them don't have complete power within themselves, but they have to kind of work together. It's almost like, where God had a mimic of God, somebody that speaks in tongues, and then the person that has to be the person that interprets the tongues. It's like given different, and that's kind of what they're mimicking almost, it seems like.
Yeah. And then this Barakale guy, he taught the observation of the stars. He basically taught astrology, which is, again, what's a ripoff of the original Matzeroth, which is talked about in Job, which was the story of Leo the lion, which Jesus coming back to Virgo the virgin. So it's basically the story of Jesus taught through the stars. And then that was corrupted, and now it's done this astrology stuff. Yep. Yeah. And then Kokabel, he taught the science of the constellations. Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds. So again, this is going into all these other things where they all have gods doing all these little weird things, but again, they're not the creator God. These are just angels that were probably given charge over. And now, so what is it? Weather modification? I don't know. Maybe. Arakiel taught the signs of the earth.
They're still doing to this
Shamsiel
day,
taught the signs of the sun. Sariel taught the motion signs, whatever that is. Again, that's probably like prophecies. And then Tamiel again taught astronomy. So all these guys.
You're cutting out really bad.
Okay. Yeah, I got to get better internet. It's just but all these guys, there's 20 of them. I think there's 15 of them mentioned, and they all taught different things. So one of them even taught the use of bitter and sweet and the use of ink and paper. So writing. So again,
Yeah.
used for good, but
And evil.
and
It's
for
like
bad.
all these things. Yeah, all these things, good and evil. It's like the media. How much evil can it get? Weather manipulation. It's happening right in front of us to this day. It's like all these things are still going on, and the root of the enemy we're facing, really.
Yeah, and
Astrology, all this kind of stuff.
the 14th one is super interesting to me because I think it goes to Jeffrey Epstein and a lot of these elite do. They murder children, and abortion is murdering children. It's feeding this. It's Moloch worship. Abortion is Moloch worship today, and it's the highest rate ever. I've heard that 400 million in China, 63 million in the United States. I don't know how many worldwide, but it's just astronomical how many children that we are sacrificing to a demon. And this 14th demon, this is what he taught. He taught children of men all the wicked smitings of spirits and demons and the smitings of the embryo in the womb that it may pass away.
Wow.
So that's bizarre that he taught men to do that.
Yeah,
and then,
all the evils of today basically being done back before the flood.
Yeah, and it's all there, and it's still being used by these evil people today. The stuff that was apparently taught at that time. So, and then chapter 9 talks about the good angel. It names Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel. We only know of Michael and Gabriel are only mentioned in the Bible. The Catholic Church in the Apocrypha, which they consider scripture, has Uriel and Raphael mentioned there as good angels, and they from heaven they looked down and saw all the bloodshed, because you talk about being cannibals and killing each other, and they asked God for mankind's sake what they should do as holy angels for mankind, and then they said, look, the bad angels have taught the use of weapons. They taught genetic tampering. What should we do? So, and so that the chapter 9 is basically the petition of the good angels who are seeing all this destruction and all this warfare and all this, all these genetic tampering to produce giants. God, what do you want us to do? What are you going to do? And so chapter 10 is about God responding. And he sent Uriel to Noah, apparently, to tell him to hide himself, and that the whole earth will be destroyed by a flood. And he instructed Noah what to do, how to escape, how to build the ark, so that he would preserve one generation for the new world, for the next world after the flood. And God sent Raphael to bind Azazel hand and foot, cast him in darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudadale, so that on great judgment he will be cast in the lake of fire. So God sent his holy angels down to do the task for him, which is consistent with the Bible too. And then Gabriel, he sent him to destroy the children of the watchers from among men, because they wanted eternal life. These children, these Nephilim, wanted eternal life, but apparently Gabriel did something to limit their lifespan to 500 years. So God gave him some power to apparently do that, and that's how that's why we said that in the Book of Giants does the same thing, that they have lifespans of 500 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So 2 Samuel 20-20 is interesting too, because it talks about these men of Moab, which were these inhabitants of the promised land, and they called them the lion men of Moab. So we don't know much about that, but were they lion-headed men? But we see in like Egyptian lore and all these things that there was all these Egyptian gods were usually half animal, half man,
Yeah.
Set, Ra, and all these, they had heads of different creatures.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And that's like in every culture. You look at the Aztec and the Mayan, you look at the Egyptian, they always have these hybrid creatures with human bodies and animal heads. Even going back to ancient Babylonian carvings and things like, it's just the same thing depicted over and over and over again. It's like, is that just coincidence as well, that they're just merging these hybrid creatures, and we're told in all these stories that this is really how did these hybrid creatures? I mean, it's more than coincidence to me.
Now I'm going to skip up a little bit up to Enoch 19, but that basically talks about the demons are influencing mankind and they're wanting worship. They set themselves up as false gods. And this is Uriel. Uriel is one of the good angels, one of the holy angels, said to Enoch, he said this, said, "Here shall stand the angels who have connected themselves with women, and their spirits, assuming many different forms, are defiling mankind, and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand till the day of the great judgment, which they shall be judged till they are made an end, and the women also of the angels, who went astray shall become sirens. And I, Enoch, alone saw this vision, the ends of all things, and no man shall see as I have seen." So that was an apparent thing. So sirens, apparently these women who defiled themselves with the angels, according to the book of Enoch, became the sirens, which were these tempters of men that would, according to like the, I think the Greek mythology, they would tempt sailors by singing these songs, and when they came, they would devour them and kill them, basically. So they were called the sirens, and that image of what a siren is.
Yeah, it's like the mermaid. You get the story of that.
Yeah,
and then there's also the story of there's like these bird-like creatures as well that were females on top and birds on the bottom that supposedly tormented, different parts of the sea or inlets of certain areas. And so it's interesting to wonder how much of that stuff has any validity, or if it's all made up, or if it has some sort of memory and some sort of real truth. None of the angels, according to the Bible never talks about any female angels. All of the angels in heaven are male. And so that's why they're actually always going after women, and they're attracted to the long hair and whatnot, is because, there's no females in heaven. So, but it's interesting, the ones going after animals and strange flesh, and going after even plants, according to the book of Enoch, in some way. So it wasn't just a sexual thing. It was an actual, just a tarnishing of creation and a manipulation of creation for their own desires.
Yeah. Well, chapter 20, this marks this is where it starts talking about the seven holy angels. And again, the book, the Catholic Bible, and some of the Apocrypha talks about these seven angels as well. And so even like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you've heard of that. They have names named after some of these angels for some reason. But the Bible only names two of the holy angels, Gabriel and Michael. But the seven that are the holy angels are these. It says, "And these are the names of the holy angels who watch." So they are also considered watchers, but these are good angels that are watching mankind, but they didn't sin with mankind. These are the ones that kept their first estate, as it says in the Bible. So the first one is Uriel. He's one of the holy angels who is over the world and over Tartarus. So remember that in the in the Old Testament, when you died, you went to paradise, which is split into two different sections. You had Hades and Paradise, and they call it Abraham's bosom. But Tartarus is deeper than that. That's a place that's farther down where these angels that sinned are chained. So this is a different part of hell, and Uriel is a holy angel who's over that world, apparently. So the next one is Raphael. He's one of the holy angels who is over the spirits of men. Ragiel is one of the holy angels who takes vengeance on the world of the luminaries. Michael is one of the holy angels, and he is set over the best part of mankind and over chaos. Sarakiel is one of the holy angels who is set over the spirits who sin in the spirit. So I don't know exactly what that means. I haven't done studies on these things because, again, we don't know for sure if Enoch is, it could just be informational, historical, good stuff to know, but we have no way of knowing for sure if this is 100% accurate. It could be. This could be completely accurate stuff that has been passed down from Enoch from the pre-flood world, and it's been preserved through this Ethiopian church. The next one is Gabriel. Again, Gabriel's mentioned in the Holy Scriptures, and he's one of the angels who is over paradise and the serpents and the cherubim. Thought that was interesting. So paradise is this place, they call it Abraham's bosom, where you have Hades on one side of the chasm, paradise on the other, and all the Old Testament saints went to paradise, and they will be raised first with Christ. So Gabriel's apparently in charge of that area. And then Remiel is one of the holy angels who God set over those who rise.
Interesting. So what's that? What does that mean exactly?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's in our time. That's what, who knows? The Bible doesn't give us a lot of information about when we die now. What happened? We know in the Old Testament, you went to paradise. You went inside the earth to a place called paradise. But what happens now is, there's some people think there's something called soul sleep, where you just kind of are in a sleep state until
suspended
we raise again. But it also says absent from the body, present with Christ. So
that's just it. I mean, even if you were in a suspended animation, it would still seem like instantly going there, because what is time? If God told you in a suspended animation, it's not like you're sitting there waiting. It would still probably seem instant in perspective of where you're at, but in perspective from where we're at right now, you're in suspended animation.
And there's an interesting thing in Daniel, in the book of Daniel. Daniel's praying fervently, and his prayer is interrupted by, I believe it's Gabriel. One of the two angels interrupts, and he says, I have been content. Greece. And the interesting thing about it, Greece doesn't become an empire for 400 years later. So time is not the same in the spirit world with angels as it was with us. It's not even contiguous. It's not like we can't even imagine. It's like when I think it was one of the disciples went to heaven, and he said, I can't even speak of the things that I saw there. There's no words to even convey what I'm seeing. It just means that we can't even understand this stuff. There's no way for our brains and our to even know or to understand or put it into words what's happening. So a lot of this stuff, it could be that we can't describe, we can't even fathom it. It's just too beyond our brains. Our souls are going to be able to experience it, but not the way we are now. So we just don't have the understanding. It's like trying to teach a dog auto mechanics. You can try. You can try. It's not gonna happen. So there's a few verses in the Bible that talk about, because Richie was really wanting to talk about the fallen angels. Where do they say it? So the Bible talks about fallen angels in quite a few different verses. So one of them is in Jude 1:6, and this kind of ties into the book of Enoch too. So if you go to Jude chapter 1 verse 6, it says, the angels which kept not their first estate, but left their own habitation, he has reserved in everlasting chains unto darkness, unto the judgment of this great day. So this is apparently talking about these 200 angels that sinned, because they're the ones that kept not their first estate. They left heaven. They left their habitation, and he has chained them in darkness, in Tartarus, until the judgment of the day, where they'll be cast in the lake of fire. So this is confirming what Enoch says basically in Jude 6. And then in 2 Peter 2:4 talks more about this same event. It says, for if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell, or Tartarus, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment. And then later it goes on to talk about how they sinned by going after strange flesh.
Mm-hmm.
So,
this confirmation that these are fallen angels that interbred with women, not the sons of Seth theory that they try to push. That makes absolutely no sense.
No, it doesn't make any. It's not biblical at all. The son, And then Genesis 6, that whole thing is talking about when where they came to pass when men began to multiply in the face of the earth and daughters were born to them. That whole thing about the angels came down and made it with women.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's many other verses. Yeah. So Revelation 12:9 says, the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And then it says there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. So Revelations 12:7-9 is talking about this angelic conflict where Michael is fighting with the dragon, with the fallen angels. There's this war in heaven going on. Even Corinthians, 2 Corinthians.
That's something we always got to keep in mind when thinking, I've got this figured out, I won't be deceived. Is, if Satan could convince the angels to fall, a third of the angels to fall in heaven in the presence of God, how much easier can he convince and fool mankind in our fallen state?
Oh yeah, and that's what 2 Corinthians talk. You go to 2 Corinthians 11:14, it says, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. He can appear to be good, to be benevolent, to be something that's, oh wow, it's so great. But good angels never allow themselves to be worshipped. Only Jesus, when Jesus came and appeared to Joshua, for instance, he said, "You're on holy ground." That was a pre-incarnate visitation of Jesus to, and in fact, Joshua, which is Yeshua in Hebrew, is the same name as Jesus. So Joshua is actually named Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
In itself. So it's another reason why I kind of picked Joshua, is because Joshua is kind of, the whole book of Joshua is the precursor to what happens when Jesus comes to with his battle in a 7-year war. Because Joshua battled for 7 years, conquered 31 kings, sent 2 spies to save Rahab into Jericho. I mean, the whole thing is a precursor.
It's a foreshadowing. It's a foreshadowing of Jesus. Was 3 days in the belly of the beast and then rose again out of the belly of the beast. I mean, it's exactly foreshadowing of Christ.
And that's, the whole Old Testament is just talking about Jesus Christ in all these different stories. And that's why I think in the Old Testament, you constantly see these stories repeated, because it's what Jesus is going to do. It's all about Jesus. And that's why it bugs me so much when some pastors say, well, we don't really need to talk about the Old Testament. It's just, we don't live under those laws anymore. So we're just going to talk about the New Testament. The Old Testament is the details of what Jesus is going to do and what Jesus did do. So I
Yeah.
mean, you can't even begin to understand the New Testament unless you have a good grasp of the Old Testament. You should study the Old Testament first, then try
Yeah.
to
The Old
tackle the New
Testament
Testament.
is the fulfillment of. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you really want to do the entire research, I mean, I think it's important definitely to understand the scripture. So oftentimes I'll tell people just read the book of John to get started, but if you're going to fully research the Bible, you've got to understand the Old Testament.
Yeah, you do. And in Revelation 20 it says, and this is talking about, and he laid hold of the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, bound him for 1,000 years. So he gets bound for 1,000 years. This is during the millennial reign of Christ, and then he's let loose for a little time before he's cast in the lake of fire after that 7,000th year. So there's so many verses that talk about that, like we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So we see all these evil political figures that are ruled by these spirits, by these evil spirits. They think, a lot of them, I think that they're being led in the right way, but they're not, because they're not following Christ. They're doing pure evil.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. Isaiah 14:12 goes into detail about the fall of Lucifer. It says, this is describing the fall of Lucifer, how you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest side of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will be like the Most High. Yet ye shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. So this goes back to, when people claim, oh, Satan, doesn't believe, that's not, Satanism, that people want to be like God. It's like the Bible is very clear what Satan taught. He taught Eve the same lie, ye shall be as gods if you eat of this fruit. And he wanted to be like God as well, according to Isaiah 14:12. I will be like the Most High. That's what he's wanted to be. I will ascend above the clouds. I will be like God. And that's why he's kicked out of heaven.
Yeah.
Is because, that is a sin. And there's all these people trying to pass off the Bible as, no, that's what Jesus said, is we all are supposed to be gods. And that's what the fallen angels, and that's what the alien deception tries to twist. And that is not true.
Yeah, we are created to worship God, for eternity.
Yeah. We are made in the image of God, and we will be give bodies like the resurrected Christ. But that does not mean we are God.
Yeah, that's crazy. And it's just it's interesting that they've tampered with both human and animal gene pools, because that the book of Jasher talks about that they not only tampered with mankind, but with all forms of animals. And I think, you see the chimeras, that's becoming more and more of a topic today, is these chimeras, as they tamper with genetics in today's world. And when that happened before, God destroyed the entire planet because of this tampering. And I think it's going to happen again, but this time with fire. And then the new world will usher in.
Yep, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds and what twists they put on it, but you can see it unfolding already.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've kind of, I didn't really want to go too much more into the book of Enoch, because then it basically starts talking about the luminaries and all these things, and it's just this is basically the part that's about the genetic tampering, getting up to about chapter 20 of Enoch, and then it goes into some really strange stuff. But unless there's some more things that people want to talk about on the chat,
Well, let me say hi to the people in the chat here real quick. Let's see who we got here. If I can bring up the participants real quick. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this discussion so far. If anybody has any more specific questions, maybe throw that in. I know somebody was asking earlier, is gold that we find in the earth the petrified blood of giants? What do you think about that, Neil?
I don't know. I mean, you never know. I mean, but I know there is something strange about gold, because there is, like, these people that have talked about gold was the thing that man has always sought after for some reason.
Yeah.
But
well, the Bible is supposed to be made of this. Everything looks like clear gold. So there's definitely, something amazing
Yeah.
to it. I think it is spiritual in nature. People get gold fever. There's something about it that almost makes us, it's like a memory, a longing memory that we've forgotten about. And that may be having to do with, something with heaven. But
yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, so somebody put the chambers of Enoch. Yeah, we did. There was an area where apparently Enoch would go into his chambers, and I think this is in the book of Jasher that talks about this, that he would study and meditate and pray, and then the leaders of the world would come to him to get knowledge, and then he would speak to them, but he kept going back, and it was longer and longer. Every time that he went back into his chambers, he would study more, and then eventually he just went away, for good, and he never came back.
That's why I think a lot of people believe the Great Pyramid was built by Enoch, and that was his great chamber, I guess, right?
Yeah, it could be, and we just don't know. I mean, there's definitely there would be the pre-flood world. I think was drastic. I think I cut out.
Yeah,
I think
drastically different.
Yeah, the pre-flood world is drastically different than we can even imagine. I mean, the technology that they had was probably far different than we have today, but was probably far more advanced than we have today too, in many aspects. Yeah. Building, the use of stones, and things that we consider magic today, were probably being used at that time in much different ways, just because they were taught those different types of knowledges. But I think we have no way to do it. But we talked a little bit about this. That if Noah's Ark was found, I think that would be one of the most amazing finds ever. And it's interesting to me that in the Bible it says that it was pitched within and without. That means they put pitch on both sides of the wood. And normally on a boat you only put it on the water side. You wouldn't put it. Oh, did you hear that about the pitch
both
part?
sides? They put pitch on both sides.
Yeah, they put pitch on both sides of the wood, and normally on boats you only put them on the part that to keep it waterproofed. And so a lot of people have speculated, because the ark was built over a 120-year period in the pre-flood world as a like a witness of a judgment to come. Wouldn't it be interesting if the ark was found, but nobody believed, and yet just think, the ark's found, it's got all this ancient DNA of all these animals. It might even have ancient books in there that they find, all this stuff, and people still wouldn't believe. They wouldn't believe, even if we found Noah's Ark. They would say, there's no God,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's incredible how man will turn their back on God.
But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's, some people, it's like the doubting Thomas. They won't believe the hole in Jesus' side. But hey, let me say hi to the people in the chat real quick.
Okay.
Just real quick. Alan Buchanan, Betty Trumbull, Chris Burnside, Christopher Lavens, Claude Brown, David Lewis, Evan 35, I Candalall, Iliam Tell, Ielis Kalu, JC, Jason Rogers, Gesture X, Kim Head, Machine Eater, Michael Curtis, Monarch Butterfly, No Spin Bear, Robert 1969, Rom, Scrappy Doo, Stuart Nevins, Test the Spirits, Timothy Ryan, Toby Tyler, Truth or Earth, Vernon Daniels, Zepso. And I know there's a lot more people than that. That's just who's in right now. But thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate you listening and bearing with us with the sound problems. We're going to try to get that fixed here when we can. But, you know, if you live in a place that doesn't have good internet, what can you do? So,
Yeah.
But,
all right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
You know, one other question I was going to ask you real quick is about have you heard this whole thing about mud fossils?
Yeah, a little bit, you know, like the mountain. Yeah. Can you hear me? Mud fossils, right?
We've lost Neo, I think. Right? He shows us.
You hear?
Oh, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Mud
Okay,
fossils,
mud fossils. So, I think you're talking
like,
for instance, on the old Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that mountain that everybody kept saying he kept making that mountain in his like potatoes, and it had those lines on it where it looks like it's a chopped down tree or something. Is that what you're talking about? And then that was supposed to be like a giant tree that somebody cut down. It was like 1,000 feet tall.
Yeah, we can't hear anything
you're saying. Yeah, we may have to discuss that later.
So
it's just cutting out on me. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I haven't really studied it. I haven't really, you know, taken it serious. You know, I don't know. Probably, I mean, just go off my gut, I'd say, oh, I'm back? Okay. Yeah,
you're cutting out so bad, we can't even hear it. Yeah, I mean, you were gone for like 10 seconds there.
Okay. Yeah, we may have to.
I didn't hear anything you said about mud fossils.
Well, we may have to hit it on a different topic then. So.
Yeah, they don't want it to be talked about. So, but we'll dig deep into the mud and maybe come back with talking about that, because people keep talking to me, bringing this stuff up to me, and so I've kind of been forced to investigate it, and I've found some really interesting things. So, but yeah, thank you guys for tuning in so much. You have anything else you want to add? Anybody else have any questions? Ron Wyatt's Noah's Ark. Yeah, that is really interesting. We brought that up with Richie from Boston, that really does look a lot like Noah's Ark, and they actually, you know, they claim it is Noah's Ark in Iran, I think, there where it's at. So pretty interesting. But yeah, Mud Fossil University YouTube talks about the blood of giants turning to gold. I'd love to see his source information for that. You know, I guess anything that looks remotely like the shape of anything is a giant Nephilim, according to Mud Fossils University. It's like giant mountainsides are Nephilim, you know, and mountain ranges that are thousands of miles long are petrified dragons and titans of old. So, and
yeah,
I'm just really amazed that this stuff is.
Well, I think that somebody said that I think one country actually has a again. I think I was gone again.
One country has a what?
Well, they have a park that says, "Yeah, this is Noah's Ark. You can actually go visit it." So
yeah,
they
Ron
claim
Wyatt. We're just talking about that. Ron Wyatt's Noah's Ark Park. Yeah, I mean, they actually claim it is. What he found there is the real Noah's Ark, and there are a lot of, you know, interesting things about that. I mean, they did some underground studies and found the metal rivets and supposed like a network of beams that were all petrified, and so I mean, it seems to be a boat of some sort.
Yeah,
and so
it'd be interesting to study that more.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, the book of Jasher actually mentions what mountain it's on, so that's something to look at too.
Anything else?
Hey,
yeah, the mountains of Ararat, not just Mount Ararat.
Yeah,
one of the mountains, right?
Yep. Yeah. So Turkey could be in Turkey, could be in Afghanistan. I don't know. Who knows? So, but it would be a interesting find, and hopefully it will be found again, and they'll be able to do really good.
I show some of these pictures that I found of these giants eating people. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I want to show this. So I'm going to do a screen share and show you guys some of them.
Nothing yet.
He was hearing me. Okay, so.
Oh, here it comes. Okay, something's coming up.
Can you see my screen here? Okay, hold on. Where is it? Okay, so you see this picture of the giant head. I'm gonna enlarge the screen here. Hold
just
on.
Coming up right now.
It
was kind of delayed on my end.
Things open or something. It's not loading the pictures. The pictures to show, and now it's timing out, because I'm trying to show it.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, there we go.
This picture.
Yep. Oh,
Can
wow.
you see that?
That's creepy. Yeah. Yeah. There's a whole series of
giant holding the little human.
Yep. Oh, wow.
It's like in slow motion here or something.
Well, that's what Moloch was. Apparently they would they're feeding this and these look like they're Peruvian. They are creepy though.
Colombia.
Oh, wow.
But they all have these sharp teeth, like like vampire teeth. So who knows? I mean, this may be the origin of vampirism, with the sharp fangs and drinking blood and cannibalism. A lot of these things show them holding like a little human or a little.
Yeah, I saw a few of them.
See that one?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, that one there. He's holding this baby upside down like he's going to eat him. So it's either a baby that they're holding and they're going to eat this baby, or it's a giant holding a regular human.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's really
either way, it's creepy.
They all have these sharp teeth like that. But yeah, exactly. Anyway, but I was gonna go out with this video here, music video, Battle Between. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll try to have another episode here soon and dig more into the truth with digging for the truth. So thanks for tuning in.
All right. Thank you, guys.
This song. Hopefully the audio will work.
Angels left their first estate to cohabitate with women in the days before the flood. And one of the things that they did was they taught mankind enchantments and root cuttings, this drug-related sorcery, the kind of things that you associate or connotate with classical witchcraft.
In every civilization, in every ancient culture, they have practiced divination. In every country and nation, humans have tried to reach the other side through meditation. Rituals and incantations, astral projection, altered state communications, some-induced hallucinations, distort perceptions, ingesting mushrooms, psilocybin, salvia, ayahuasca, DMT, the cutting of roots of pharmacia, sorcery and shamanism, psychics with visions, channeling beings to possess. Back to invitation, spirits and demons who are familiar to the victim. Entering those who don't resist them through open doorways, connections from other dark dimensions. They fabricate apparitions based on expectations to be below to suggestion, a hocus pocus fascination, presenting false illuminations with one motivation, to present an imitation, an alternate explanation, poisonous intoxication. The serpent's venom's like a weapon that can change and mutate to always keep you guessing. 1/3 of the angels fell, good versus evil, heaven and hell. And now I'm caught in the battle between the night and the darkness and places unseen. 1/3 of the angels fell, good versus evil, heaven and hell. And now I'm caught in the battle between the night and the darkness and places unseen. Since the beginning, the plan never changes. They adapt to the beliefs of the ages. In every culture and race, see their traces erased, all their origins lost in the mazes of time. All these places aligned with the similar tactics and actions with mass-based malevolent beings creeping in with enchantments while seeming benevolent, teaching advancements to end with their origins. Evil in nature, this dangerous behavior enforced human labor, strung by the fingers, the strings of the puppeteer, pulling the leaders, led by the king of fair follow procedure, the spread of their greed. Seeking creatures deeper and deeper, hopes among sheep that make signs of a wonders for wicked adulterous generations who seek for a secret and reap what they sow as their sorcerers conjure elixirs and spirits who speak to the sages and soothsayers, mystics and wizards and pastors, leaders pour poison down throats of their listeners, twisting through words and their messages, offering counterfeits, magically turning their staffs into serpents, worshipping false gods on purpose. Third of the angels spell, versus evil, heaven and hell. And now we're caught in the battle between the night and the darkness and places unseen. 1/3 of the angels fell, good versus evil, heaven and hell. And now we're caught in the battle between the night and the darkness and places unseen.
There was an effort made by the dark forces to take the initiative to attack mankind. And to introduce them and teach them these